Good day, everybody. My name is Skender Daerti, and I welcome you to another episode of the Medtech Business Academy, sponsored by the Medtech Experts. I am pleased to be joined today by Barbara Strain and Mike Sperduti. And we've been talking a lot because we are always looking at what are the effective things, what are the things that people just do, what are the things that kind of are thought to be, hey, this is what I do when I'm in the med tech world, etc. And one of the most profound things that just often gets overlooked, yet is always done, is going to trade shows and conferences. And it's astounding to us when we hear such high dissatisfaction every year. I can't remember a year where I really heard high satisfaction with conferences and trade shows. And I've been at this for 20 years. Okay. And we know that trade show attendance is down. We know that trade show spending is down, but it's not at the level that you see as commensurate to the dissatisfaction level, right? And that's because I think everybody just views going to a trade show and a conference, and particularly exhibiting at a trade show and conference, as the price of doing business in our industry. It's just something you do, right? And what we see is the average company is spending upwards of 500 grand a year to attend various conferences. That's total spend. And many companies are spending well into the 7 and 8 figures. Okay. And the ROI, what was the ROI figure? Let's see. So conference ROI is rated as poor or fair in 86% of responses in a recent survey, right?
86%, you said?
86% rated it as
Wow.
poor or fair, right? Think about that. Yet everybody just keeps going and we keep doing it. I am not of the proponent. One of our colleagues, Scott Alexander, he's not on here. If he was on air, he would be like, oh, trade shows need to go away altogether. I actually don't believe that. I think people are just doing it wrong. I think they're not approaching it the right way. I think they view it as a passive thing that they have to do in September. And then all of a sudden September shows up and they're like, oh shit, did we order enough product to get to the booth? Did we order the right displays? Did we do all this? Did we do all that? And then it kind of comes with a bang and then it's gone. Right? But Mike, you don't believe that's the way to do it, right?
No, I mean, look, I'm with you. There's a place for trade shows. And I think what you're going to see because of the whole digitalization of business and us working remotely and just being disconnected from face-to-face encounters, that we're craving for face-to-face.
Yes.
And I love having meaningful conversations with peers and learning and growing, and a lot better than I like watching videos and those kinds of things, and I'm old school like that, but I do think there are different people, and people like me are craving that personal touch. But that being said, if you go to the trade show and you put up your booth and you build it and expect them to come, that's exactly the 86. You're in that 86 percentile. And if you want to be in that 14 percentile, my suggestion is you use the show the right way. And that is get an ROI. Go into the mindset, not saying, I'm not going to look at the ROI. We just have to be there. I'm not concerned about the ROI, or there's no way to measure it. That to me is incompetence. If you go into any expense as an executive without tying it to a return on investment, that's negligence on your part, right? So the first thing you need is a strategy of how you're going to drive people to your booth. And we could talk about that a little bit more later, but in my personal opinion is I'd rather see people downsize their booth and then allocate more of the funds to driving people to that booth and giving them a reason to show up and be there. Because one statistic that I do know is that 90% of attendees that go to trade shows have a pre-agenda. They already marked off which companies that they're going to see. So if you're not on that must-see list and you're expecting them to walk by, they are going to glaze right by it. Barbara, what do you think?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there because as a provider for 41 years before doing consulting and uh, moderating and things like that, I went to some of the biggest shows as a microbiologist. We had like 18,000 people who attended. And the lecture halls would have like 5,000 people in them. And we would have to have 3 full days of exhibits just to get through it all once. But now it's small, as Skinder said, for a lot of different reasons, a lot of which has to do with money. But coming from a provider standpoint originally, is that they're now really at organizations only allowing maybe one person to go to one meeting a year. So the providers themselves are either cutting travel altogether, or I have several friends in management positions, director positions, and they say so and so is going to go to this one, so and so will go to that one, so and so to that one. And you hope they all come back with something, right, from all of those. So the issue is also the suppliers who sign up for booths really don't know then the mix of people they might get, even though it's a specific, set of folks, whether it's supply chain or cardiology or pharmacy or radiology, whatever it is. But you may not get that decision maker. You may not get a person who even understands what you're talking about and how can they take it back. So it is a conundrum.
Well, when you look at the root of why trade shows and conferences were necessary, right, it really came down to three things. And this was why providers invested in sending people there ultimately, right? Number one was to learn something new, okay, in some way, shape, or form from your peers, okay? Number two was to get personalized, to get some accreditation, okay? That was a big thing. Getting the accreditation and telling the hospital, yes, I know it's my license, but guess what? I can't practice if it's out. So maybe you should send me a place where I can get accreditation. And then the third was the networking. Okay. So if we break those three things down, okay, and the ROI to the institution that would send these people, first of all, the accreditation, that's been completely democratized. You can get more credits on the internet in any way, shape, or form than you could going to a conference. Yes, you have to invest the time to do so. It's a lot easier to get flown to Miami and be like, I'm going to go sit in 6 hours and now I've accumulated all these credits. But the providers have realized, wait a second, why do I need to fly you to Miami? Right? And by the way, it's not my license. You don't want to practice. You don't have a license. I don't pay you. Right? So that's one thing. Second, the learning new. Well, pretty sure we live in a time of the most democratized time period of information that has ever occurred, right? It is readily available anywhere you want it. So that's two reasons now. So if I'm an institution and I have, my 100,000 employees clamoring, you have to send me somewhere, I'm like, Google it or look it up on Chat GPT. Because the networking, I don't know if I really need to pay for you to network because frankly, that probably also makes you a flight risk, right? The more network you have, the more options you have. I don't know if I want to pay for that.
Right.
So if we look at it, the three institutional reasons why conferences and trade shows existed, the impetus isn't there anymore. And yet our side of the industry still goes thinking, and then we come back and, quoting the same survey, the top three frustrations that were indicated were A, access to decision makers, B, quality of leads, and 3, the cost of attendance, right? Those are the 3 greatest. Well, access to decision makers, they're not there. And if they are there, like you said, Mike, they got their punch list, they're doing their things, and they're being very, quote unquote, surgical about how they're approaching their entire time at the conference. Okay. And the quality of the leads, like, that's another thing. We're seeing the providers just aren't paying for it. There's still merit, but I think everybody has to reevaluate, how do you find value in trade shows?
I think you just said something really critical, right? If you really believe that your decision maker is not going to be there, then that is a complete waste of money.
Yes.
Right. So the first thing to that point is you have to do your diligence on the show. Right. So just because the show is in your wheelhouse, who's your decision maker you're looking to connect with? And when you look at the attendee list, look at the percentage of attendees that are in that decision making title. And another great thing that a lot of the shows are doing today, because they understand this, I was great friends and still am with a guy by the name of Kevin Gaffney, who ran the Emerald business. And, he was hell-bent on trying to provide value for the trade shows because that's his business. So he started implementing online tools that exist in the show, which show you who's going. And if you pay a little bit extra, now you have access to connect with them pre-show. So now I can look up the universe of decision makers that I want to contact. And now I can say, hey, Skender, I understand that you are the decision-making title that I'm looking for. And I also have done some research on you before, so that way this isn't just going to be a cold outreach. And here's a reason why I'd like to talk to you. Can we set up some time at this show? And if there's enough of those people and you do enough of that activity, you're on your way to starting to earn a return on investment.
Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. So just before we started, we were talking about the people with the 10 by 10 booths, and they're way on the ends of the show and not towards the middle and things and whatever. I'm still one of those people. I go to probably 4 or 5 shows a year. Skinder goes to lots of them. And Mike, I don't know if you get out and go to a lot of shows. I've never asked you that. We know how Scott feels. He hasn't been to a show or touched one in I don't know how long.
I don't think
But
he's left.
I purposely go up and down every row and talk and introduce myself to everybody just because they're there. They need somebody to come by, and they're really excited when someone comes. But I tell you, I've learned a lot from those folks that are in those back rows and things. But to me, it's how do you also organize it better? I would rather, like when I'm doing value analysis, either talking with suppliers or working with providers, is we talk about who's in the same market as this cardiology device or who's in the same market in this wound care or whatever. I'd rather go and talk with each of them in the same like area, like little pavilions or something. So I'm comparing in my head so then I can know my little checklist in my head and things because that's how I think. Maybe I need to go ask different questions and go back and things rather than trace all the way across and things. So maybe there just should be different pavilions of things. I'm trying to figure out how to make it more exciting so that if you're a generalist like value analysis, supply chain and stuff, yeah, you have your own meetings, but when you go to other meetings, you're kind of a generalist and you need to know about a lot of different things. How do you pull that off without going to each specific meeting and spending all that money? But networking is what's important. I do my best networking at breakfast, lunch, and after hours, if you know what I mean.
And that's where the money's made. I mean, and truly, that's where if you book a breakfast meeting as a medical manufacturer rep, if I have a breakfast meeting, a lunch meeting, and a dinner meeting, and it's a 3-day show, and they're all with people who I genuinely either are actively in the process or want to engage in my process, that's money well spent. And that's the beauty of the trade show, by the way, is assuming the audience is right. Right? You got to go back to Skender's point. Audience is wrong, you don't belong there. But if the audience is right, now it's how do I attract them? So this is a great way to do a customer focus group. I mean, they're all there. You invite them to a nice restaurant. There's plenty of them there. You put on a little show. You do a side show within the show, just with your particular thing. Great way. I've done that many, many times. If you have a product that could be demoed, when I had Laser Touch One, we literally set up two people that were with chairs, and people got pain relief right there. And that was the easiest way to sell the device, was get people out of pain and get them interested, right? So if you have something that you could demo on people, that's a very good way to get something into your booth. And the last thing I would say where you can get great ROI is customer appreciation, deepening that customer relationship, going to those breakfasts and those dinners and thanking those customers, and then learning what's going on for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as Barbara alluded to, we probably attend about between 20 and 25 different conferences a year, right?
Wow.
And we view that as critical to what we do, because we span 69 different specialties in healthcare. And as a result of that, we like to, the conferences allow us to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the macro and the micro environment, right? If you go to that many conferences and you see trends pop up between each of the specialties, well, that becomes a macro issue, and then you learn about the micro issues within each specialty and what's trending, what's hot, and what's going on there. So that's very critical to us. But like you said, Mike, we spend an exorbitant amount of time, even with 20 to 25 conferences, doing pre-work, right? Taking the opportunity to create outreach, generate meetings, doing all those things, right? Identifying who's going to be there. How do we connect? What's important to you at that time? And I feel like so much of the time when we get there, our time at conferences is we're running around the entire time. And I feel like so many other people are just there, and it's a quasi vacation, right?
Yeah, there's so many people. I mean, that's the most,
right?
Yeah, it's the most infuriating thing in the world if you're an owner, right? To think that you're paying all this money, and the biggest abusers, by the way, are the publicly traded companies, or the companies that have a lot of money where the owner is not present. It's a stockholder, so it's really a disconnect between money spent and money being wasted. And there's nothing that's more infuriating, because you see it all the time. And you pointed out, you're doing those things to drive ROA, Skender. Another thing that you guys do, right? You get in front of the room, right? You'll do your speeches, and you'll get that attendance, and you'll drive them to the booth, and you'll start networking that way. And for anybody that's listening, getting in front of the room is the single most important thing that you can do. Because for whatever reason, people take you as an expert when you get in front of the room, and they're not the smartest people in the world. I know a lot of them because I speak with them. They just had the confidence and the wherewithal and the understanding that if you get in front of the room, people are going to listen to you. And so if you do bring value, get in front of the room and speak. It's not as hard as you think. If you have good material, they're looking for new speakers. They're looking for content. Same thing writing pre-show. They have pre-show emails going out. You can write and author some of those things. So the idea here is positioning you so that you're a must-see. Even though you're a small company, you can do it. It just takes the effort that Skender's putting in with his company.
Yeah, Barbara?
I think one of the things is we can harken back to our COVID time, because there was like almost 2 full years where conferences really didn't happen. And there was a lot of very inventive things that were done that I wish we maybe hadn't scrapped. When I knew we were going to talk about this topic, I put down a few little notes, is that I wish there was some way. And one of the conferences I went to, we actually gave them sort of a template and said, give us a little video that covers the following topics about your product or service so that people could access it if you couldn't go to a show. But it would be great if companies had some sort of like a value prop or something like that that was scripted within a certain time frame, and people could just like, uh, do something on an app or something like that and understand a little bit more about what that company actually did rather than, oh, I got to go over to the booth. I got to let them tell me things. And it may not be anything I want to know, but they have to get it out and, all those sorts of things. But if you had a preview like that, would be helpful. But it shouldn't just be the people that are going to that show that are suppliers. It should be something we should have available to us anytime, anywhere. And if we're looking at, I'll just go back to say cardiology, we should be able to hear about at least a 2 minute pitch or a 5 minutes pitch or something in a certain format. So we each at least get the value prop. Anyway, I'm always trying to do something that's going to help everybody who's never even been to a meeting because they work in a very small place and they can't afford anyone to go anywhere. At least go to a chapter meeting or something that's local, but they should all have some sort of access to some. How do I know what they're really trying to sell me? I don't really want to read it. I want them to tell me.
Well, the difference in today's day and age and the statistic that's out there is that 80% of all education on your product happens before you've ever even talked to the customer or the customer's ever talked to you, right?
Right.
And it's no more telling than in the automobile space, right? There are very few people that walk into the car dealer just being like, oh, tell me about what kind of cars does Nissan have or Toyota, right? No, most of the people go in there and they have some semblance of knowledge of, I want a Toyota Corolla, or this is what I'm buying, and I think I want it in the SE package. But I just want to see what's the difference in the SE package and the SL package, whatever it may be. The customers are already educated. Yet I think the challenge that we have as an industry is we haven't grown with them. We still think the first time a customer talks to us is the first time they're being exposed or educated on the product or on what we do, right? And that's ridiculous. I mean, Barbara, you said you walk around and there might be some times where you're seeing a company for the first time, but you have done a targeted list where you're like, hey, I want to know about CRM devices. Who on this list looks like they may have a CRM? Okay, well, Medtronic, yeah, I get it. Okay, blah, blah, I see that. Okay. Oh, this company seems like it might be, right? But you've already targeted them. You already know they do a CRM type of thing. You've already educated yourself to some degree. Yet what happens is when you get there, you got Joe Schmo, VP of sales or director of sales being like, hey, let me tell you everything, 80% of which you already know. Right? Why is that the experience? Why haven't we evolved? Why aren't we understanding? We're working on a whole new platform now, and we're excited to launch it when we do in several months. But one of the things that we're identifying is really just consumer behavior. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Our attention spans have grown. Excuse me. Devolved. Okay. So far to the point where the average consumer can only consume 40 seconds of information. That's how long our attention span lasts. 40 seconds, or I give up. Right? We tested this anecdotally on a subject just a few days ago. And the person basically said, it was a younger person, and they said, if I see the line on a video and it says a minute or longer, that's too long, I just skip it. Right?
Yep.
Meanwhile, if you read history, Abe Lincoln would speak for 6 hours on the Hill, right? And people would be able to pay attention then. So think about how far we've come since 1846 to now where he would speak for 6 hours on a subject, people be enthralled, and now you can't. Now he wouldn't be able to get out, 4 score before people would be bored.
Well,
So I
people
think
didn't have television and a variety of things back then, so they had to go miles anyway. Go ahead, Mike.
Right.
what I was thinking was, that everything you're saying is 100% true. And also, I think that there's a contradiction there. Look at like a guy like Joe Rogan, right? He totally blew the lid off the talk show format, right?
Yeah.
It was like the talk show format was what, an hour for the Tonight Show, and but basically a half hour worth of content. This guy's talking basically until he's exhausted, and his guests are going with him, and his audience is going with him. So what I believe, and I think everybody's like this, is you have a really short attention span for not interesting things to you, and you have a great attention span for things that you are passionate about learning and interested in. So I think, what the right way to market, and that's why you have to do the 40 seconds, is to get to the people who want the long content and feed them into the long content, right? So that 40-second stuff is to grab the attention of the people that ultimately you'll get more of attention with and weed out the ones that you don't, specific to like medical device education and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And you have to know what are those really important little points to the provider, your audience. Because if you start with, hi, I'm from this company and we've been in business for 180 years, and you go on and on and on, you need to know that they want to know what my pain point is and how do you solve it.
If you say what you just said, Barbara, this is my company and we've been in business this long, nobody cares. Who gives a shit? I mean, that's all about you. And that's exactly. They want to talk about the most intelligent, most interesting person in the whole world, which is them. They're there for their own needs. So to your point, the conversation should be, I understand that you are a chief nursing officer and chances are you're having some staffing issues. Now you got their attention, right? Because their mind is like, yes, I am. Now talk more.
Yeah. They understand your pain point.
Yes.
Yeah. I think as we're evaluating this new platform, which is a real high-tech platform, and it's got some amazing features, I'm really excited to showcase it for everybody once we do it. But we're working with people who are not in healthcare, and so that it's funny to us sometimes because the disconnect when they can't understand, right? And they're like, oh, here's a version of something that we launched 2 years ago, but we don't use it anymore, right? And we're looking at it like, do you understand that is basically the equivalent of Marty McFly hopping in the flying car, okay, to 2050. Actually, I think it was 2013. I think that was actually where he went, right? And being like, oh my God, that's how we would still feel today. But our industry is so backward in the way it approaches customer interaction, right?
And you say it like it's a bad thing. I think it's awesome, and I always did. And I still think it's awesome today. And the reason I think it's awesome is if everybody did the right thing, it'd be hard. Like to be in the 14%, you just have to do all the things that the 86% aren't doing. So you figure out what the 14% are doing, and you do that. And now you're in the 14%. Who gives a shit about the 86%, right? You care about your shareholders. You care about you doing the right thing. So I don't care that everybody else is doing that. I know what works. You know what works. Barbara knows what works. Why? Because we study it, we live it, we're passionate about it. And so do the 14%. For those who are listening that you're not in that percent, or you want to get in that percent, or you're new, just follow the blueprint. Do the pre-marketing, get in front of the room, customer appreciation, all that stuff that we talked about. Watch what happens.
Love it, Mike. I love it. That's absolutely it.
No passion from that man, I tell you.
Let him go. Let him die. It makes it easier for you and your shareholders.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things that I used to love hearing, and I caused a ruckus with my sales team in the last organization that I ran. And it's because I took us from a series of 30 by 30 booths and I brought us down to 10 by 10s. And at the time, that was seen as just completely sacrilegious because they were like, it's an implication of how we're doing as a company.
Yeah,
And
you're
I was like,
shrinking.
yeah, but on the other side, I view it as now I have more capital to spend in other areas, right? The 30 by 30 and the 10 by 10, we did not see any difference in yield. Okay.
Good.
That's it. And the only thing that happened was we saved ourselves 200 grand that could be spent elsewhere. And I think what I'm starting to hear now, and I've heard it from the entire captains of industry, from most of the biggest companies, they are all starting to be like, we don't care about the optics of the 30 by 30 anymore. We're going to a 10 by 10. We're going to a 10 by 20, right? That's the canary in the coal mine was there 10 years ago, right? It's just now everybody's starting to catch up.
Well, and the funny part about it, it's like food on your plate, right? You put a little bit of food on a big plate and you look like, oh my God, I need more food than that. Where if you put it on a little plate, you look full. A 10
Yeah.
by 10 jamming with people lined up to get into your booth is a whole lot more impressive than a 30 by 30 with three people in it.
Yes.
So you're not just obligated to the rim of the hall. You'll all be sort of like in the beehive.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Our producer points out it's a nightclub strategy, right? Put the velvet rope
Exactly.
outside, make people stand in line, right? And nobody knows it's
This is
empty
cool. I
inside,
gotta go. Yeah.
right? Nobody knows it's empty inside. It just looks full outside. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, one of the best booths ever that I saw was he sold the business. His name was Harvey Diamond, was the CEO of a company called Drive, and they made wheelchairs. They're a big wheelchair maker, and he went against Invacare when Invacare was the big bear, and he had these. He would go to MedTrade and he would build this interior dome that you couldn't see inside. He'd have a band inside there, and he'd have two people at the front, right? That basically, like Steve was saying, to basically the rope and get him in. But before you got to the nightclub and the drinks and the whole thing that he had for you, you had to go through his maze of qualification and getting what he wanted out of the relationship as well. And it worked famously.
We did something like that in my last company too. Unfortunately, we didn't follow through with it properly, but we created a hell of a buzz.
Yeah, but he was a business guy. He wanted ROI, right?
Yeah.
And so he didn't just end it with, hey, we have a nightclub and this stuff inside. It was every lead was followed up, every lead was qualified. Again, 14% does it a lot different.
Yes. Yes. I agree. Well, I'm glad there's a lot of passion around this subject. I think, as Mike, you just stated eloquently, right? There are people that are getting success. It is the 14%, right? They're doing something and they're seeing value out of it. And the successful people are going to find ways to continuously create success. But we can't keep doing things because this is the way we've always done it. And that's what the 86% is doing. And that's just a waste of money, right? So let's wrap it up. Final point there. Why don't we start off with Barbara?
So one of the things we have to remember to tell our audience, and they're noticing, is that a lot of the tried and true different conferences that are available are now like shaving time off their conferences because that extra half a day costs the conference probably more money than they're getting an ROI. So you always have to be aware of how is this conference different this year than it has been before, and then play to those strengths to be the 14th percent.
Yeah, great point, Barbara. Mike.
So I just go back to we crave human contact and relationships, and we all know the best way to build a relationship is face to face. And so when you have your entire industry, and if your decision makers are in a big facility, just give them a reason to see you. Reach out to them, invite them to a breakfast or a lunch, have a demonstration, but just don't go to the show, put up the booth, and build it and expect that they will come. Please do yourself a favor, do the things that the 14% are doing, and get your shareholders the return that they deserve.
Yeah, great point, Mike. I do believe that trade shows have a place. I believe that the model of just show up is not how you manage that. I do believe that decision makers and providers, they want to hear, they want to connect, they want to learn more about the stuff that they're already exposed to, right? 80% of it. But we've got to do a better job of filling in the 20%. We got to do a better job of making it compelling, making them want to connect with us. We got to do a better job of really connecting and understanding on a human level before the professional level. And I think that's where so much of the other industries have a heads up on us. And hopefully at some point we'll catch up. So with that, we appreciate everybody paying attention, listening to our podcast. Please like, share, comment anytime you see us. Let us know how we're doing. Feel free to provide some feedback and some information. If there's ever a topic that you want to hear about, just let us know. Barbara and I are pretty easy to connect with. Mike's a little intimidating, but don't
I
bark
don't
at
have Scott to kick around today, so
Scott,
Yeah.
yeah. But we appreciate it. All of us are open to ideas, and please also listen to our value analysis expert series, as well as we're going to be kicking off a whole new wave of episodes coming here very, very shortly. So with that, we thank everybody. Have a great day.
thank
Bye-bye.
you.